So it's time to find a treatment center for your loved one, and you have never gone through this process and you have no idea what you're looking for. When you sit down at Google, there are hundreds and hundreds of pages of sponsored ads. And how do you sift through all of the options? What are you looking for? And all of these things. And they can be very confusing, right? So I'm going to go through some basic things. I work with people from all over the country. I have found people, families, people for recovery, rehabs all over the country. Now, obviously, I can't go out and vet every single rehab in the country. All I have is based on where to start is their website. And so when I go to their website, what am I looking for? What do I want to see? Now, what I do is I tell families, let's just, for better or for worse, let's narrow it down to three options. That's it. Because otherwise, you have all of these other options and it's overwhelming, it's confusing. We want to narrow it down to three options. Now, there's a lot that goes into even narrowing down the three options. Are you looking for inpatient? Are you looking for IOP? Are you looking for PHP? What are all of these different treatment options talking about, right? So I can kind of give you just a really quick, brief run through of what all of these different things mean. I mean, I think the best thing to do though is just kind of honestly just Google it and see what are all the differences for these. I mean, inpatient is your typical full hospitalization. They're there for 30 days or however many days their program is designed for, and they're not going anywhere, right? And then there's PHP, which is a partial hospitalization, which is a basically a very, very intense. They're spending a lot of time at the centers, but at night they still get to go home, right? But it's like pretty much their whole day is consumed with recovery. They are in classes, they're doing all this stuff. So, but they're at home a lot. And then you have your IOPs, which is intensive outpatient, which is similar to PHP, but not so similar because they're not going as much. Maybe they only go to IOP like 3 days out of the week, maybe 4 days out of the week, maybe it's partial days. Different programs have slightly different layouts, so I can't say this is the specific structure, but in general, that's what that means, right? And so then there's just your regular outpatient, which is maybe they check in a couple of times a week or whatever, but they have some sort of accountability. So depending on what you're looking for, is that's a good place to start is you want to get specific into kind of what are you looking for. So when you do sit down at Google, you start putting in some keywords to start narrowing down and sifting through some things. I'm not sitting here saying which one is better. I think depending on what the circumstances are, one is going to maybe work a little bit better than other things, right? So we filter through those things. I would highly encourage if you're really still confused, if you have a lot of questions after what I have just said, always feel free to reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. You can go to my website, therecoveringfamily.org, or you can just email me directly at info@therecoveringfamily.org. It comes to me. I'll be happy to answer any questions for you. Now, there's some other things that I look for when I go to a website, and I'm probably going to get a little bit of flack, especially if the websites aren't hitting some of these things. This is just what I look for. This is the way it is. I'm not saying that if rehabs don't have these things or treatment centers don't have these things, that they're bad. I'm just saying if all I have to go off of is the website, then that's how I'm basing kind of my decisions. Obviously, one of the first things is overall look and feel. Does it look like a professional website? Right? I mean, that's the most obvious. It needs to look a little bit put together. Now, that seems like it should be a very duh thing, but I have sifted through hundreds of websites from all over different things, networks of rehabs, and you would be surprised at some of the websites that people put together. I prefer it to be easily laid out and not so like cluttered. Like a lot of people can have a lot of clutter with all of the different programs that they have. Listen, if we're going to inpatient and we're looking at 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, I mean, it can be overwhelming if you have way too many treatment options and you're doing too much. Sometimes you're just doing too much, right? Like I I'm looking for someone who kind of, or a treatment facility that really knows who they are. They really have got their programs nailed down. They know who their audience is, and that's where they're at, right? So that's one of the things that I look for is if you have hundreds of different treatment options and programs to choose from and select from, man, I feel like the treatment centers are just trying to do too much, which means they're spread too thin trying to satisfy everyone, right? So that's one of the things that I look at. Another thing that I look at, and again, I might get some flack for this, but I'm not sending a parent over to a hotline. So if that website is like contact us and it's an 800 number, you're out. I hate to say it. It does not mean that they're a bad treatment center. I don't feel comfortable saying, here, call this 800 number, as opposed to talking to someone there who is like local and really can kind of, guide them and talk to them like a person, not like a number, right? Like, obviously, if you're a family member and you are working through this system, you don't want to feel like another number or like dollar signs or anything like that. Granted, I will say, and this is very important, treatment centers, however you feel about them, are a business. They have to have a sustainable business model in order to run. So just because treatment centers charge money, obviously, if you can't go and like throw someone in a hotel for free, it's going to cost a little bit of money if you're going to go send someone away for 30 days or even spend so much time. I mean, you have therapists, you have overhead, you have all of these things. So, like, I don't think that charging money is a bad thing, but no one ever wants to feel like a dollar sign, right? And so I just feel like 800 numbers are a little bit more set up for that dollar sign thing. I could be wrong on that. I'm just telling you what I look at, right? And that's one of the things that I look at. Another thing that I look at is I have four non-negotiables of recovery for what I think that people need in order to stay clean in a sustainable way or stay in recovery, however you want to say that. So the one of the non-negotiables that I have is people in recovery need mentors. Basically, someone in their life that can teach them how to live their life. Now, in a 12-step program, that's called sponsorship, but I'm not here advocating 12 steps or not 12 steps, right? There's so many other different recovery programs, and they have some sense of these elements to them. It just might be labeled a little bit differently. And so I'm just kind of telling you the most common terminology, but either way, a mentor is someone that can kind of guide, right? A second thing, and none of these are any less or any more important than anything else. The second thing, though, that is a non negotiable that I feel like is community. Community is essential. That's what, like in the 12-step program, again, not advocating for 12 steps, just saying that the 12-step meetings is where you find like-minded individuals and you get together and you teach each other how to be in recovery, right? That being said, community is really important, and it's also really good to note, though, that sometimes when we first get into recovery and we don't know what we're looking for, we don't know who we're supposed to be hanging out with, we kind of get attracted to the people that are in the same place that we are, maybe also new, maybe also a little lost, maybe a little confused, maybe don't really know what's going on. And it can be a little bit of a blind leading the blind. And let's also remember that we are in recovery, which means that we don't always have healthy mindsets. So we can sometimes pick people that are not good for us. And we just have to learn how to accept that. It doesn't mean that the community as a whole is bad, but it does mean that sometimes individuals aren't great. Now, yes, hobby communities are really good. So if someone's a really big like activist into like running or hiking or all those hobbies are good. My caution to saying that is it's a good community to be into, but also if they can't make you feel like there's nothing wrong with you and they can't relate to this whole like what what we're used to relating to through our addiction, the things that we've done and the way that we feel about ourselves, they may not be able to understand that part of us, and sometimes that can make us feel a little bit less than and like not good enough, or like maybe we want to be normal too. So sometimes those kinds of communities that don't have anything to do with substance abuse can not be as helpful if it's just their sole thing. Like if it's something in conjunction with a recovery community, then that's great. But to make it just the sole thing can sometimes be a little bit more detrimental in the beginning because we don't have anybody teaching us how to be in recovery and not use substances, right? The third thing that I kind of look for, or that I think is a non-negotiable, is a program of some sort. Obviously, in the 12 steps, that's called the 12-step program. That's what the 12 steps are. It's a program, right? But things like Smart Recovery, Dharma Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, all those other recovery programs, they have some sort of something that is integrated into people's lives to teach them how to be and heal and work through the stuff that made us turn to drugs to begin with. So that's really an important thing. Otherwise, if we don't start changing our mindsets, then the mindsets that got us into using often take back over, and then we're right back where we left off, sometimes worse off even. So that's a really important thing. And also, the fourth and final thing that I think is a non-negotiable is don't use drugs or substances no matter what. Period. End of story. Now that seems like a really duh thing, but it takes a lot of skills and tools under our belt in order to actually maintain that. It's really easy to say that for, like, say, oh, I'm not going to use drugs for a day. Are you not going to use drugs for 5 years consecutively? Are you not going to use drugs for 10 years consecutively? You have to have a really, really strong foundation. And also, we go through a lot of pain through that. And we have to learn how to manage that part of ourselves and be in a lot of pain and still figure out how to get through that and not use drugs. And that can be a real challenge. And every time we use drug, it can kind of take us back a little bit, right? It's like we don't have to necessarily always start over unless things get really, really bad. But like if we're just like using drugs every time we feel like we can't cope, then we're never building that muscle to not use drugs. And so, yes, it sounds like an obvious thing, but it's not very easy to do. It's simple, but it's not easy. But I go through that to say that when I look through these websites of rehabilitation centers, therapy programs, and all of that, how well do they answer those things, right? Do they have an alumni program? What's their aftercare? What's the transitions? I'm not saying that these rehabs need to be engaged for an extended period of time because that's not what they're set up for. But how well are they transitioning people through the earlier stages of recovery in order to create a foundation for them? Obviously, they can't do everything, but are they setting people up to believe that there is things that they have to do afterwards? Because treatment centers are only there for the very, very beginning, and that's it. That's the very beginning of the journey. It's such like if the journey is this big, I can't even put that in the screen. But if it's this big, the treatment center is only this much of their journey. At least that's what it's supposed to be. That's what it's supposed to be designed for, of what they really need. Not that they don't need it, because that's the start. They need somewhere to start, right? So it's a very important piece, but it's only this big. Are they answering to the fact that they are only this much of the journey and that there's so many skills and tools that they need to maintain that, not just for a year or two? And I don't want to dismiss that saying that that's nothing. That's great. I mean, that's a lot, especially for a lot of us. But, 5, 10 year plan, they can't make people do that, but are they supporting that foundation? They're not trying to cure anybody. And anybody that says that they're the answer, that they're the cure, I mean, run for the hills because they're not. If they say, "Oh, we have a higher success rate," I would love to understand where are they getting these numbers from? Because I think that that's kind of crap. I mean, if you could talk to someone and they just sound real and they're like, "Listen, it's up to your loved one how successful they want to be." That's real. That is real. If they are selling you on a cure, or they sound like they're selling you on a cure, run. One of the things that I also look for, and this isn't something that like I think all rehab centers or treatment centers need, but for the sake of you're a family member, you are watching this. A lot of times families aren't involved in their loved one's recovery, believe it or not, for one reason or another. It doesn't matter, irrelevant. You are watching this, which means you are involved. So if I am recommending treatment centers for someone else, a family member, I want to look and see if that treatment center has a family program. Not all of them do. Not all of them need to have a family program because not all of the time are family program or families involved in their loved one's life. And so I'm not going to look necessarily like if I'm looking for someone in recovery for their treatment and their family's not involved, that doesn't matter, right? Because their family's not involved. But you're watching this, which means you're involved, which means that a treatment center should have some sort of family program, right? Because I feel like that is essential. Even though, yes, what I do is help families through this, I think it's also good to work with in conjunction of a rehabilitation center and go through their therapy program and also like have someone on the afterwards for as much or as little as you need, someone like me who can still ask, you can ask questions to and get answers or get direction and all of those things. So I highly recommend that the treatment centers that you're involving yourself with do have a family therapy program of some kind. The more intensive, I think, the better. There are some treatment facilities out there that have some really great and wonderful family therapy programs. I think that if that's something that you can afford, you should afford that. I think that's worth it. If that's something you can't afford, you can always fall back on me either way, because that's what also I'm here for. So, anyway, I hope this was really helpful, and please reach out to me if you have any more questions, if you want some direction, if you're like, listen, I got it narrowed down to 10, but how do I get it narrowed down to 3? I can help you narrow that down. I can help you into a little bit more, just depending on your situation. This was a broad overview, but I can go in a little bit more in depth if I have some more information about like your loved one and what you're looking for, and I can help narrow that down. I've done this hundreds of times. So please feel free, reach out to me. Again, website, therecoveringfamily.org. You can schedule a call, or you can also just email me directly, info@therecoveringfamily.org. I hope you have a great day, and please reach out to me. Talk to you soon.